I think we are. It's 10:32. We could go ahead. It's totally up to you. We could wait a couple more minutes if you're waiting for your partner to show up. So we're waiting for
Nat.
So Nat Jacobs, yes.
Nat, we just
got off. Here we go.
So
He's
good.
coming.
They're there. All
right. So you could probably get started.
All right. I don't see Nat. Let me see. Nat, you want me to share screen, or are you good to share screen?
I'm happy to do it. I think
Sure.
I'm definitely I'm glitching over here.
Are you glitching? Okay.
So I'll let you know if something.
All right. I can.
And before you go further, just a reminder to everyone, and I may interrupt a couple times just as I see more people join, that to ensure that you are counted, make sure you put your full name and your school district in the chat so I can track the attendance for today's session. And thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. We are very happy to join you today, and we invite you to turn your camera on if you're okay with that. It is so helpful to see everyone's faces and also to know who's in the room. So we'd love to get a sense, what grades are you all teaching, or what developmental bracket of students are you supporting if you're not teaching directly? Bianca, thank you so much for putting your camera on. It's nice to see you. K3, all right. All right, while you guys are typing, I'll get us going. Good morning. Oh, look at you all in the room. Thank you for turning your camera on. Good to see you. Love that colorful carpet. So we're here today to talk about stress and anxiety. And Dr. Finn and I just came from the same presentation, but we had it geared towards middle and high schoolers. So we wanted to make sure that we created enough time, because we know that our littles show up with different manifestations of stress and anxiety, and it's different to be teaching and supporting them. So to get us started, Dr. Finn and I are sharing pictures of our little selves with you. So this is little Nat, I don't know, probably like 5 or 6 here, really enjoying art, which is something that I still love to do. I work for the Oregon Department of Ed. I use they, them pronouns. I have been a clinician. I've been at LCSW for over 20 years. And I've worked as a therapist, clinical coordinator, trainer, group facilitator. And a lot of my work included supporting elementary school aged young people who are in the state hospital, and residential treatment, day treatment, therapeutic school. I've also been a school social worker in an elementary school in Brooklyn, New York, but I grew up in Oregon, and I'm very happy to be here with you all. My philosophy is sharing is caring, and how that will come across today is like, I just want to share information. I know that we don't all want to hear or do anything with it necessarily, but I just feel like sharing is caring. So you guys get to decide what to do with that when the time feels right.
All right. Hello, everyone, and happy Friday, Saturday, weekend eve. Just wanted to introduce myself, Dr. Finn. I identify as wife, mother, daughter, sister, aunt. I say I'm from the South, so sometimes it's auntie. I serve students and communities as an educator, an advocate, a mentor, and a partner. And then I serve educators. I serve as a professional developer, partner, a support base, and definitely a cheerleader for educators. My work at ODE really is around building capacity for transformative social emotional learning in schools and districts across Oregon. And then my philosophy is that reflection begins with looking inward. It begins with looking within self rather than looking back and looking on the actions and behaviors of others. So it really is a self-involved process. And so super excited to share this space with you all, and we get to steward the space and the learning together.
I probably should have mentioned that I'm the mental behavioral health education leader at ODE. Sorry, I should have included that. Okay. We would love to welcome you into the space today, by asking you also to step back in time and think about your younger self through a strength-based lens, of course. And ask a couple, I like to ask, you can pick one, but I think my favorite one was, what was your area of strength and adorableness, right? Like, what did people know you by? And if you're in a shared classroom where I see there's like 3 or 4 folks, feel free to come off mute if that feels good, and you can just popcorn into the space. Or you can use the chat if you would also like. How would you describe yourself? What motivated and incentivized you? Our last group, it was really sweet to hear that folks were, they were like, I remember being kind of a worrier. I remember being really competitive. They shared some really great pieces about their younger selves.
My younger self was very outgoing and interested in music and art.
Mm,
Yes, love it. Thank you for sharing.
yeah. All right. All right. We got a little shy group. That's okay. Okay. Anything to add before I scooch on, Dr. Finn?
No, I think no, if I was in my areas of strength, my little ponytails, and I don't know about adorableness. Oh, what incentivized
Oh,
me
come
fourth
on. Look
grade.
at that.
Still trying to get my pigtails.
Pretty
Um,
adorable.
Thank you. But you know what? I can't remember being incentivized. I had Miss Guinness. Miss Guinness was my fourth grade teacher, and every Friday, if you met the criteria, you're going to get a Kit Kat with a note from the teacher, and she'd write her note, um, her penmanship with it was on this glossy blue paper. I remember it, and so it was very affirming. So I think it was more about the handwritten note from my teacher than the Kit Kat. Um, and so I think about motivation and incentivization, even as we start to onboard this conversation around mental health and how do we support students when we're experiencing dysregulation. So thanks.
Mm, thank you for that. Well, we're here today because we were asked to show up because it sounds like there's folks who have a lot of students at this point who are
Yes.
experiencing both stress and anxiety. And so that is exactly what we're going to talk about today. We're going to come at it from 2 very unique perspectives. One from a mental health professional, which is the first part of this presentation, and the second is going to be from a very seasoned educator and T-cell wizard specialist, Dr. Finn. And so together we're going to weave together our decades worth of experience in the hopes that it can offer some insight, some skill, and we really invite you to ask questions and reach out to us if you're still percolating on things after today. So thank you so much for being here. We're so happy to be in community with you for the next 60, 75 minutes. So I like to start off with having shared language because I think it's important that when I say stress and anxiety, that we all understand it in similar ways. So I want to first address that they are distinct, right? Anxiety is it's persistent and excessive worry. It lives in our body and our brains for longer periods of time compared to the middle and high schoolers. They tend to experience anxiety. It's about 32%. But for our younger kids, 2 to 3% of 3 to 5-year-olds and 9.2% of 6 to 11-year-olds experience anxiety. And part of what happens with anxiety is that it catalyzes some anxious thinking. And so I'm curious if this is going to sound familiar, but sometimes there can be this either or thinking, right? It's black or white, it's right or wrong, but it's really just like we don't have a lot of that kind of middle liminal space. And we also can fixate on the worst possible outcomes with anxiety. So it can really impact daily living. It can impact the way we learn and the way we make friends, the way we take care of ourselves. And if we think about stress, stress is it's situational, right? It's like it's a reaction to a change, a threat or an event, and it could be just the way that you perceive it, right? Maybe the school flooded. Now we have to change classrooms. Oh my, right? You know, students that they might be so stressed out about that. Some of them could be like, whatever, I love this new classroom. It has, pretty carpet. So anything that maybe interrupts that day to day that is unexpected is where we see a lot of students reporting feeling really stressed. And of course, the older we get, the more kind of complex our stress shows up. But for little kids, we see most of that through somatic, through the body, through, right? My tummy hurts. Oh, my head really hurts. I'm really tired. I'm not hungry. And I'm curious what you all notice in your classrooms when you're noticing students showing up with stress and anxiety. What are some of the things that kind of gives you the idea that, like, what indicates that they might be stressed or anxious? Oh, thank you. Quick to react, right? So their nervous systems are they're on edge. Maybe some irritability. Maybe some brevity of language, like maybe they're not talking a lot, maybe it's kind of clipped. Yeah, thank you. One more. What does it look like for students in your that you support? All right, no worries. Feel
I
free
was
to
going to say a lack
Oh,
of engagement.
lack of engagement. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. Okay. They're kind of maybe in their own head. Yeah. Um, what is happening that is similar in both stress and anxiety is that there's a part of our brain called the amygdala, which is kind of the danger lookout. And the amygdala signals to the rest of our body whether or not we are safe. And that could be perceived, it could be a perceived threat and sense of safety. So what happens is the amygdala kind of sends out these flares that, uh-oh, you're in trouble. And this was great, right? Back thousands of years ago when maybe we were going to be chased down by a lion or a tiger. Today, we don't have that same need to react, right? So usually that reaction looks like fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And I like to add another one, phone. You ever see folks really just get dissociated into their phone? They just kind of, I guess it's a kind of freeze, but I think of it as a way of dissociation. It's this sort of like response. And that is something that is shared between stress and anxiety. And I have a short video clip that I would like to share around the physiology from the perspective of students. So I'm gonna let them speak to this.
I'm 10 years old.
12 years old.
12 years old.
10 years old. Well, I'm really good at making people laugh.
I'm actually really good at reading.
I could kind of juggle.
Dancing, fishing for a lot of fish.
I'm bored. I'd like to play basketball.
I like to read.
I go to my pool.
Running, biking, swimming.
Something I worry about is my cousin because I don't want him to get bullied.
My family, my future, tests. I don't like the pressure. Just does not feel good.
Being worried feels like frightened or scared or nervous.
Like my heart is beating faster and faster and faster.
Like something's wrong.
I feel like there's butterflies in my stomach.
To relieve stress, I like to talk about it with my mom.
Drink water to just help the process. And then I just calm down.
Breathe in and breathe out. Like,
Lay down, listen to music, putting my mind on something else.
Cuddle with my cat.
I think that's pretty cool, how they could just call.
Kids should talk about their feelings that are keeping inside of them, or else nothing's gonna happen.
It's okay to feel sad, worried, or anxious from time to time. There are things you can do to work through your emotions and start to feel better. You're not alone. We're here for you. For ways to get support, visit kidshelpphone.ca.
Thank you, California and those little humans. So part of what some of those students were talking about was their physiological response to stress and anxiety. It shows up so much, so similar in the body. And I wanted to just give you a little bit more around the way that the stress hormones, so adrenaline and cortisol are both stress hormones. And so when our amygdala tells us that we might not be safe, that we need to hunker down and be in survival mode, what we have to do is we have to find a way to convince our amygdala that we're actually okay, right? Yes, it's big. Yes, there's a change, but wait. How do I get back into my body? And so what did you hear? What did you hear some of those students talking about? What did they say kind of helped them when they were feeling anxious and stressed?
I feel like a lot of the same techniques that we do as adults now, taking that deep breath, stepping away from it, trying to refocus on something else, like with the music, drinking water, because it is important when your body gets dehydrated.
Yes. Yes, thank you. It's really about coming into the body. And if we can convince our body that we're okay, that then sends that signal up to the amygdala that says, it's okay. I couldn't deep breathe like this if we were being chased by the lion, right? And so it's really like when I used to work with the littles, we would do things on like I would say, put your feet on the floor, and inside of your shoes, I want you to feel your toes, and I want you to move your toes back inside of your shoe. And then you could see like their eyes get a little bigger, and I'd be like, are you trying it? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, what does it feel like? And they would say, it feels like my feet are on the floor. And I was like, and you can feel your body. And they're like, yeah. And I was like, what else does your body need? Oh, I do need some water. Or you know what? I need to like get my wiggles out, or I need to like go read a book in a beanbag, right? And so, yes, Morgan, thank you. Talking it out with a trusted person, that is the container. That is actually like what's so much of what we're going to talk about later today. Okay, so what happens when our limbic system, so that is the hippocampus, prefrontal cortex, amygdala, when we have our limbic system come online, we have this prefrontal cortex, right? And the prefrontal cortex is something that takes, it doesn't really fully develop until the age 25. So what does that mean? It means that if I'm working with an elementary school student, a middle school student, and a senior, their prefrontal cortex are going to be developed, cortices are going to be in different stages of development, which means that they're going to have very different developmental capacities to regulate their feelings and their emotions and make decisions. So I'm guessing a lot of you are familiar with the hand model of the brain. Is this a familiar Dr. Dan Siegel? So he helps folks kind of with the same concept. So when our amygdala tells our body that we're experiencing a threat, that adrenaline kicks in and our prefrontal cortex comes offline. That's like when our lid is flipped, right? There's nothing you can say to me in that point that's gonna, like, especially if you tell me to calm down, that's not gonna help. Right? It's going to be that trusting adult. It's going to be like, hey, I'm going to put your favorite music on, or I'm going to give you your stuffy. I'm going to give you a grounding object, right? So when it comes to learning, their brain is not capable of learning in that moment. We have to be able to bring them back to that grounded, calm space. So, I asked you this question before, and I don't know if folks have other things that they remembered in the meantime, but I am curious the ways in which anxiety and stress shows up in your classrooms. And here's what other folks have said over the years, mostly in the categories of performance, behavior, and relationships. But yeah, I think you guys named them actually before. Disengagement, a sense of overwhelm, PTSD, easily startled. That reminds me that if we think about the range of student experiences, those that have experienced complex and long-term trauma, what do you think their startle response is going to be? Right? Their amygdala is going to be primed to say that we are in danger, something's happening. And so I think it's really helpful to think about as much as we can know about our students and what they're showing up with, that is going to speak to their capacity to bring down their adrenaline levels and their cortisol by doing some of that breathing. And also for us to recognize that we're going to have to help co-regulate, right? Which we do every single day. But especially like if I'm someone who already experiences anxiety, or I'm already stressed, what is that bringing up in me? I need to be able to be so calm and centered to support that student that's going through a crisis, or it's really anxious or really stressed out. So, oh, so yeah, that's, I just want to hold a little space. That's the end of my brain anxiety stress section. And I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Finn in a minute, but just want to pause for a question or a thought before we move forward. I see something coming into the chat, so I'm going to give that a minute. Nope. False alarm. Okay. Dr. Finn, I hand it to you, my friend.
Awesome. And so as we continue just the conversation, thinking about mental health and what's happening physiologically. And I show up into this space with about 30 years of education, and I'd say about 23 years of actual direct student facing instruction as an educational practitioner, as a classroom teacher, student success coach, all the things. So I come into this lens deeply embodied with practice and connecting all of the physiological mechanisms, the social emotional, and how does that show up integrated in and through practice. And so over the course of my career, I've heard folks say, that's not my job. Like, that's not my job. I'm that relational. I'm here to teach science. I am here to teach kids how to read. I am here to teach kids how to do math. That's not my job. And so at one time I saw that it's very deficitizing. And I'll and but when I unpack it, I really do believe that a lot of our colleagues, when they say that's not my job, they're saying I'm not comfortable with that body of content. I'm not comfortable with these physiological dynamics. I'm not comfortable like stepping into what's happening with the prefrontal cortex and with the amygdala. Like, that is not where I'm landing. So as I've translated, it really means I'm not comfortable. I don't understand. I'm not skilled in that area. I want to stay in my lane. I don't want to say or do something wrong to exacerbate challenges that already exist. I don't want to get in trouble. Like, I'm going to do what I'm paid to do. I literally have heard these ideas and phrases. And so what can get in the way of us showing up to support mental and behavioral health for students and adults? And this is not meant to shame or embarrass or humiliate, right? We are great at what we do best. And so there's comfort and regulation in staying within that space. It's the same for our students, the things that they do best, whether it's folding airplanes or playing pickleball or doing the things that they do best that brings them comfort. There's nuance and regulation and comfort in staying in that. So when we invite them to come into an uncharted space and activate schema and to start to be curious about new bodies of knowledge and content in the educational discourse, that can be dysregulating. So for us to assume, or for us to have colleagues that assume that we can separate the physiological from what's happening in that academic space, really we're setting ourselves and our students up for some complex nuance and honestly a lot of frustration. So what can get in the way? If you want to come off mute, I'll hold maybe 30 seconds, or if you just want to kind of popcorn out, what can get in the way? What can get in the way of adults showing up to support mental and behavioral health for students?
I mean, I think you already touched on it by just not wanting to exasperate the situation, say the wrong thing, step over a line. Yeah.
Fear, lack of
Yeah.
knowledge,
Mhm.
sometimes not having clear permission from the leaders to go there and do that, lack of training. So yeah, all of that. And so that's why I say it's non-shaming and non-humiliating. We just get to do a better job of helping our educators to make those connections. And so whose job is it? It's everyone's job. Even in this moment right now, as we get to steward this and facilitate this space, we get to tap into, hey, how are you all doing? How are you showing up? Ada's not lost on me that we're showing up very human. Some of us have competing priorities. Some of us maybe have had some harsh and complex conversations with those that we love in our homes. Some of us are showing up as caregivers. Some of us are bearing the burden of maybe some financial extremities. All of the things are showing up right now in this moment with us as adults. And yet we get to talk about creating conditions that support elementary students experiencing stress and anxiety as we regulate ourselves, right? So this is real and it's very tangible. So as we go to the next job, it's for all of us. Then we get to do it and we get to support each other and create partnerships and de-silo our work. So as we think about the mental health and the transformative social emotional learning, I'd just like to ground us in the definition of T-cell, transformative social emotional learning, a process whereby young people and adults feel strong, respectful, and lasting relationships that facilitate co-learning to critically examine root causes of inequity and to develop collaborative solutions that lead to personal, community, and societal well-being. And how does that interface with mental health, right? We see some of the language that cross-references emotional, social, well-being, this idea of relating to others. And so as we tap into intentional mental health supports, then we're also integrating that transformative social emotional learning dynamic. Now, each has its own explicit way of supporting students. The T-cell unfolds at a tier one, a very universal, global perspective. And then that mental health work, there are also various tiers and ways that it plays out with explicit instruction. However, they do interface. And so this idea that we don't have enough time, once we learn to really integrate, then we find that we really are expanding the time that we have and we're expanding our systems of support. And so as we go to the next slide, really wanted to elevate that T-cell centers our shared humanity, right? As we show up, I'm showing up as a Black woman. So as we talk about identity markers and who we are and the skin we're in and our cultural and ethnic frames and ways of being, yes. And guess what? Not everyone shows up as a Black woman in this space. I am assuming, and so please forgive me if that's a wrong assumption. We're showing up wonderfully decorated in various textures, in various tones, coming from various backgrounds. And what connects us, even before we have conversation and discourse, is humanity, right? You take the oxygen out of the room that you're in, we're all going to have some of the same expressions and some of the same representations of being in a place of danger. We're going to start to see, right, that we're in parallel space. And so we center the transformative social emotional learning work, just inviting our students to understand who they are as human. What does that mean for them and to them? How do they center that? What does it mean for you to center your humanity? And it's very interesting when we create opportunity for this conversation to unfold and to take what we find out as adults and students talk about humanity and how that connects with learning experiences and instructional experiences and professional development experiences. I think we'll start to see where some gaps exist. And then that helps to impact the way that we unfold the conversation and the way that we build systems and processes within our school communities. I once was doing some restorative work with two groups, and these were adult groups. It was a group of student success, a group of grad coaches with a group of school counselors. And out of that, one of the counselors said, I just want to work in a place where people say hello and ask how you doing. Right? That's grounded in shared humanity. That's grounded in care and compassion. Do we need a program for that to happen? No, but do we need some time to build relationships and to just be honest in the fact that it's not happening, and to create some invitational dynamic to invite people into that space. And what does it mean to have a culture of care just within our professional community? And then what are the opportunities to engage students in this idea of what it means to be human? Right, as we dispel spaces of positionality, as we look at variance in socioeconomic status within our classrooms, as we look at the things that students like to tout and comment on and mock and ridicule. Let's level this out. Let's talk about what it means to be human. Let's have the conversation about what's happening with the amygdala. Let's talk about what's happening within our bodies, and how our body stabilizes when there's dysregulation. And so this T cell invites all of this work. So this is just a space for you to reflect on. Like, I'm just going to take 30 seconds just for you to reflect on that. What does it mean for you to be human? How are you taking care of your humanity? And then how are you? So as we go to the next slide, we want to talk about the fact I've been an educator for a very long time, and I have studied teacher reflective practice as a response to systems of oppression, of positionality, of so how do we enact reflection so that we can grow, so that reflection comes from within? A lot of times, let's reflect on the lesson, and we spend so much time talking about what the kids did or didn't do, or what's happening in the school. What did our administrators do or not do? Well, what happens when that reflection really is a space of agency, and it helps us to become more strengths-based? So I want to be vulnerable. I used to do a lot of journaling. And matter of fact, what you see here is published. And so that was my journal. I took it everywhere. I would sometimes tape myself, go back and listen to myself, because I had faulty practice. I was deficitizing students, and I was glorifying problems. And so I was challenged, honestly, by my mother, who's a retired principal, an amazing educator. And one day she said to me, Lisa, like, I hear you. Now, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Yes, the kids are not doing that. The kids are not doing this. And I was in Atlanta Public Schools at the time, servicing students who are in the margins, high illiteracy in the community, high poverty in the community, high violence in the community. I served in a student across the street from the school was a cemetery, and around the corner was the federal penitentiary, Dobbs Elementary School, off of Constitution Avenue in Georgia, in Atlanta. And so on April 15th, 2014, I write this: my kids have needs beyond me. My education is not enough. My blackness is not enough. Being a mama, not enough. Cultured and world traveled, a scholar, I'm still falling short. I taught the same fraction lesson 3 times using manipulatives, pizza fractions, unifix cubes, and worksheets. Some still don't seem to understand fractions as a part of a whole, and that the whole can take on various shapes, forms, presentations. Do it again. Teach, perhaps differently. Note to self: check in with the team tomorrow during planning to see if they have the same challenges and suggestions. So really, I'm challenging myself. Essentially, I'm saying I really do feel, and maybe some of you have felt, like I'm not enough. I'm not fit for this. I what I'm doing is not working. Students aren't getting it, and we can stay in that space of really deficitizing ourselves and deficitizing our students as we deal with our levels of insight, sometimes lack of insight, when we're doing all that we know how to do and it's still not happening. And then when I say to myself, check in with the team, start to check in. What are our partnerships? What are our check in structures so that we de-silo the work? What I cannot do, I believe Bianca can do. What Bianca can't do, Beth can do. When we start to really de-silo the work, build our relationships, then we become more collective in efficacy. And so this checking in model, I'm saying, hey, what piece am I missing? And so sometimes when we're saying, I've done all I know how to do, yeah, all that you know how to do, but there's still so much more that can be done. And so once we tap into the expertise of the colleagues around us and the resources around us, then we better, we're more in tune and more equipped to provide deeper and more substantive resources and learning experiences for our students. Then on April 16th, I write this: you heard me. I am the adult. You're the child. I do not explain myself to children. I will not ask you, no, tell you again to do what we're doing. You are wasting paper. You're off task. You're doing your own thing. And when it's time to use paper to do your work, you won't have any because you've been doing origami all morning. You should be reading the story of the week, just like everybody else. It's not time for art or free time. Look around. Tell me what everybody else is doing. I don't know if that plays out in your school. I don't know if you've heard something like that. Give me a thumbs up or a something, something. If you've seen or heard something like that. You don't have to dispel if it came from you. I don't mind saying that was me. And you can see all kind of deficitizing language. You can see my arrogance. You can see my attitude. More importantly, you can see my dysregulation. You can see me try to assert my positionality. But what's the goal here, right? What's the goal? Where have I honored the fact that maybe this kid is absolutely brilliant in origami? But this idea of you've been doing this thing all day. Now look around and get in foot with everybody else. Be like everybody else. It's time for this thing, right? Where's my opportunity to differentiate? Where's my opportunity to really dig into it and to elevate the power of art? Where's my opportunity to say, yeah, we could have some opportunity for this at a later time. I'm going to invite you to do this, even if it's for a few minutes, so that as a class, we're in sync and we're going to get the same knowledge. And well, where is that more compassionate framing? And we can unpack that just by itself. So I really invite us into this deeper space of self-awareness and identity so that we can become more strengths-based within ourselves and with our students. So as we go to the next slide, and that self-reflection is definitely a key component of our organ transformative SEL framework. Now, when I was in Georgia, I wasn't doing T-cell, of course, using organs framework, but I did enact social emotional learning, like whether it was at the beginning of the day, trying to watch and mind my body language, the way that I was speaking to students, the way that I was asserting myself as nurturer and caregiver in the space, the way that I established systems of respect, the way that I invited co-collaboration and co-construction with students so that they could see themselves in the rhythms of the class, in the structures and protocols, the rituals and routines of the class. And so our organ T-cell framework is set up so that we have these guiding principles, being culturally responsive, community responsive, being strengths-based, and that's our focus today, being trauma-informed, grounded in neuroscience and the science of the brain. We just had a bit of that physiological piece at the beginning, that grounding in neuroscience. How does learning unfold? How do we scaffold? When do we scaffold? Like that science of the brain really should inform the way that we interact with students, the way that we construct our lesson plans and our learning agendas. Being culturally responsive, that is not new. I'm so glad that it's in this framework, right? Because it is embedded in the way that we show up. Being sensitive to the needs of the adults. That adult T cell, we say within our framework, we do the same, use the same mechanisms with the adults that we would use with our students. Showing grace, showing compassion, looking at learning needs, looking at learning styles, looking at goals, helping adults to be aware of who and what we are and how who and what we are shows up in the classroom as we think about our own biases. In that one of those journal entries I write, my blackness is not enough. Why? Because I had a bias. I'm showing up in here. I'm black, y'all back black. We got this. And they were like, no, go back again, sister, and try again. Right? They're saying we are humans. We have our individual needs, our individual interests, and you will show up and honor that. Now, the fact that we were all melanated in this space, it did create some space of community, some space of engagement, some space of common connectedness. And when it came to the intellectual and instructional discourse, I had to push past that. And so when we think about being culturally responsive, that plays out in so many different ways. And that needs to even play out on our faculties and our staff. So we're asking educational leaders and professional developers, make sure that we're being culturally responsive as we meet the needs of diverse faculties and staff communities. And then at the center of it all is our student social emotional learning. And then we're constantly talking about how do we create conditions. The overarching theme, we're creating conditions so that we can learn and thrive. And that is a collective effort. At the top, you'll see T-cell serves to to complete and complement the work you're already doing. T-cell is not coming to compete with it. There should not be, we've got to move this out the schedule to push this in. T-cell discombobulates, dysregulates. Transformative social emotional learning is not meant to dysregulate programs. It is really meant to enhance and help create conditions for the programs, the initiatives, and the agendas that we currently have, whether it's chronic absenteeism, whether it's substance abuse, whether it's increasing our community engagement, our parent connections, whatever it is, we get to think about what are the conditions that need to be set so that we can attain to that goal. So as we go to the next slide and we start to think about this work, we're thinking about our misconceptions. What are the misconceptions around social emotional learning? And perhaps you've heard or seen some of these. Maybe you felt some of these. And we want to interrupt those misconceptions, because if the misconceptions are allowed to be true in space, then T cell will feel like another weight on the back, another thing that we have to do that feels nebulous, that feels insensitive, that feels unimpactful, and lacks meaning. But once we integrate it, we can have those moments of explicit instruction, those activities. Perhaps some of your schools have the programs. And when the program time ends, people continue. So social emotional learning allows us to continue to be about the service and support of the people, even when we, close the computer and turn off that virtual program. And so you can see some of these misconceptions: absence of boundaries, one size fits all, it's touchy feely, that it's a replacement for mental emotional health. It is none of that. The social emotional learning framework and those standards are not meant to perpetuate any of these ideas. It does not have to be an extra time requirement. If your school has it in the program and in the agenda for the day, and there is a time allotment, that is beautiful. However, and even in that time, whatever the activities that you're doing and the activities that are unfolding, they should be building capacity for the interactions that are going to happen subsequently throughout the day. And so I often say I may stop to get gas. That's my fill up time, right? I just filled up this morning. That's my fill up time. It takes 2 minutes or so. That's that T cell explicit time that you have where you're doing the lesson. However, the utility of that gas takes me for miles and miles. That means that this T cell work that happens in that explicit block or that explicit time, it should have felt impact. The activities should connect with the learning activity that they're going to experience. Maybe a turn and talk moment. It should enhance their relationships and their abilities to connect with each other, even as they're talking about the content throughout the day, even as they're thinking about regulation within their own systems. And so we could go on and on, but these some misconceptions. So I just wanted to add that as we think about what T cell isn't and what T cell is. So as we go to the next slide, thinking about shifting towards T cell. We've been talking about social emotional learning. So what is this T cell? Well, the transformative moves us along a continuum. Initially, when that social emotional learning space, I'm responsible for myself, looking at myself as an individual. That's that self-awareness. That's that identity. My personal well-being is front and center. We prioritize that. And that's a good thing. That's a positive thing. Then who am I as a participant? Excuse me. In interpersonal relationships, as a community builder, a participant in a community where I'm looking at my own individual success goals, and I get to help make a contribution to the goals of others. Right. So there becomes this idea of accountability and shared responsibility as we engage with each other just in that interpersonal space. And then transformatively, how do we start to take all of that robust dynamic and start to think as participants, as community, as individuals, what are some things, systems, and structures that we need so that we can ensure more democratic, fair, and inclusive communities? And I often say, even in a kindergarten, first grade class, when our kiddos start to say, hey, that's not fair. That's not fair. Net got to go to the carpet first yesterday. Zylesia got in line first yesterday. Why do they always, when our students start to create that type of language, they're ready to have discourse around democracy, fairness, inclusivity. And we get to partner with them in those moments to say, hey, let's think about some systems and structures that could make it feel more fair or more just. And in those moments, our students start to enact agency. So we start to look intentionally for those opportunities to develop agency within our students, to create opportunities so that their voices can be heard, so that they can begin to construct and co-construct systems policies within our classrooms that can govern the way that we connect and engage throughout the day, they really do become partners in the experiences of the day. So that's that transformative space. And it can look many different ways, but the goal is for our students to be able to identify challenges and complexities within their own systems, and then to add voice to what it could look like to make it better for everyone who's a part of that system. So as we go to the next slide, I'm thinking about our T-cell braid. These are the competencies and constructs. And so the social emotional learning standards, and we won't go over those standards, that they extend from these competencies and constructs. My self-awareness and my identity, right? We're constantly having conversations, inviting our students to think about their identity. And our students are talking about who they are and becoming more self-aware, aware of our body language, aware of our tone, aware of how we show up, aware of where we come from, aware of our biases, aware of our culture, and how does that interface when we're in larger community. Our self-management. Self-management is not just sit down and be quiet, right? Sit at your desk. Self-management. What are your goals? How are we achieving those goals? How are we checking to see if we're on par for achieving those goals? How are we managing our resources, our time? Like, what does self-management look like? How are we managing our thoughts? How are we managing our emotions? So that self-management is critical and crucial. And so many times I've seen it play out is self-management is be quiet, kind of like behave yourself. And it's so much more substantive than that. How do we create spaces for agency and inviting our students to help collaboratively problem solve some of the challenges that they face daily? Social awareness and belonging. Belonging is so significant in the life of a student. How do we create spaces so that we know that we belong, not just have a sense of belonging? How do we create space so that our students can provide their recommendations and their suggestions and see those play out, to see those be affirmed in various ways throughout the school day? Building relationships, being curious. Oh, curiosity should play out throughout the day in every content area. That's the basis of learning, right? Energizing the language and giving students the opportunity to ask questions, and then to create some integrity around what does it mean to be curious? What does it mean to form questions? What does it mean to be vulnerable? There are no foolish questions, right? They're missed opportunities. And so sometimes we struggle even to ask questions, to raise our hands. What does it feel like in our bodies as we're studying science? As that student interfaces again with that content area that they know that they're not as achieved or excelled in, right? But they still show up. And so we create some compassion around that. So as we go to the next slide, and I want to create some opportunity. We have about 20 minutes left. To get us to talking or just reflecting. So as we prepare for that, I am going to invite us into the space just so that I can hear your voices. But we have the guiding principles, and we talk a lot about our conditions for learning. The conditions primarily are going to be cultivating authentic partnerships, and that's partnering with students. So if you're partnering with students, amazing. If you need to think about ways that you can curate partnering opportunities with your students, that's amazing. And I often say, whether we're talking about adults or students, when they can see themselves within and have been a part of the building from within, we lessen our time that we have to spend talking about buy-in. Why? Because I see myself already in the plan. I see myself already in the structure. I had a hand in that. I was invited into what it meant to think about this, as opposed to feeling like we got to get folks to buy into something that feels more coercive, right? And more compliant driven. So the opportunities that we have for our students to help establish norms within a classroom, we get to say, hey, we created these together. Or I heard you say this when we established that, right? So then it is some shared power dynamic. So we adopt equitable practices, and then we create thriving learning environments. So as we go to the next slide, there are some opportunities for you all to think about the conditions for learning and thriving for students and for adults. Like, what's unfolding in your school? What's unfolding in your classrooms? Cultivating authentic partnerships. How are we establishing trusted relationships? And literally just being explicit. We want to build and establish trust. Why? Because we're going to learn together. We're going to share together. We want to be able to respond with dignity and integrity to each other's thoughts elevating each other. We want to establish that trust. We want to mitigate complex, disorienting interactions in which we're feeling devalued and belittled. We want to establish trust. We want to co-construct environments that cultivate health and well-being. We want to do that for adults and for students. So that's the cultivating authentic partnerships, and then adopting equitable policies. I have a list of just some strategies and practices. I highlighted creating discipline support policies that center practices that meet student and adults' needs, that help repair harm and promote community healing. I know a lot of us, we have restorative work happening in our schools, and you know, I appreciate restorative practices. I even more appreciate a restorative culture, because sometimes we try to have these practices to unfold, yet the culture does not permeate of restorative compassion, of trust and relationship. It's the first, if the first time that we get students in a circle is doing a restorative conversation, we've missed the mark. Right? If the first time that students see each other and interact with each other is doing a restorative conversation, that's going to be a challenge to have something restorative. We've got to build before we can restore. And so we want to think about the right, because if we've not first built the thing, there is nothing to restore. So sometimes those conversations can be futile. So we want to think about that. And then how do we create thriving learning environments, meaningful environments, creating rituals and routines, again, promoting healing, belonging, opportunities for adults and students to give feedback, to be affirmed, and then using a strengths-based approach for the work that we do. So these are just some broad ideas that we could think about as we think about how we practice these conditions for learning and thriving. And this is the way that we look at it through our framework with our partnerships. Because yes, teachers are exhausted. Everyone right now is trying to race to the mark of spring break. I totally get it. And yes, we are exhausted. The work that we do is laborious, is tedious, and the more partnering efforts that we have, then we can lessen some of that tension, right? Creating opportunities for students to partner with each other, partnering with parents and caregivers, partnering with community organizations, partnering with each other. We need to partner out so that we can remain whole. Part to whole. And so with that, let's go to the next slide. I had some, I think this is this the video? So I wanted to share this video with you, and let's prepare, just give a little bit of feedback. And I'm gonna, just to move us along, I'm gonna ask and front load this question. If you were to do a dear student response video, what is one thing that you might say to the student? And would love to hear from some of us who've not spoken yet, or for those of us who have spoken. But again, we want to partner with students. We want to share the load of leadership and the privilege of progress. So this is going to be Dear Teacher, a heartfelt advice for teachers from students. And then what would you say to any one of these students if you were to do a Dear Student video? So we can go.
Dear teacher, I know it doesn't always seem like it, but I really do want to listen and learn.
It's just my brain. It's kind of different. So this is what I'd like you to know about me.
I have to move, or I really can't pay attention.
Even though I'm not looking at you, I can still listen to what you're saying.
If you tell me, sit up straight, now I have to use all of my brain to do just that.
It makes me feel sad when you tell me to try harder, even though I've already tried as hard as I can.
I actually listen better when I'm rocking in my chair.
When you give me a bunch of directions, I start to think I will never remember all of this.
Sometimes my mom or dad ends up doing all of my homework. So here's how you could maybe help.
Let me get up and move while I'm learning.
Let me look wherever I want when you talk to me.
Let me rock or slouch in my chair.
No matter what, please don't take away my recess. Give me help I could do all by myself. Make directions very short.
Just ask me, what does your brain need right now?
And one more thing. My brain might be different than yours, but it's still amazing. Sincerely, your student.
Your student.
Your student. Your student.
Good. And I love at the end, they're like, hey, we're walking through these complexities, but I'm yours. And I'm wondering, are they thinking you're mine? Like the reciprocal space. So would love to hear your thoughts on the video, but even more importantly, what's one line that you might tag if you were doing a Dear Student video in response to these students, or perhaps um, one of your students? And I have been guilty in my earlier years when I literally reeked of faulty teacher practice. I have been guilty of taking away recess. So if I were to do a Dear Teacher response moment, I would say, Dear student, I'm sorry. I will never again take away your recess. Does anyone have one being willing to be vulnerable enough to share? You're invited to the space right now. And I also see this as a way of honoring our shared work, but also honoring our students. Would love to hear your voice.
I think the line that spoke to me the most was the taking away of the recess, because you're taking away their ability to get all of those wiggles out,
Absolutely.
to basically reframe and get focus again. And that's literally what they're in trouble for, is not being able to focus. So yeah, you're almost hindering their ability to kind of re-regulate themselves.
It's like we take away in a punitive, consequential way. I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna take away this thing that I know alerts you and activates you in a positive and healthy way. Yeah.
Or brings them some joy. Now
Absolutely. Oh yeah. I mean, honestly, I have, like, our team at one time, one person a week would keep the kids that couldn't go out for recess. That dysregulated me. I wanted to go out and get some sun and hear the laughter, right? So it just shows to me that we didn't understand responding with sensitivity and compassion to behaviors of our students. We didn't even really understand where those behaviors were coming from. Not saying that we didn't need systems of consequence and response, but to pull away recess was problematic.
I try to instill my 3 C's: compassion, communication, and consideration.
So good. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Is there anyone Kristen, is there anyone in your space that would like to elevate their voice? See Rachel. Just want to make sure I leave space for everyone. I will honor you as a special individual and work to understand you. Thank you so much. I will honor you as a special individual and work. Oh my gosh, I love that's beautiful. We do have to work to understand, because we are complex in our humanity. We're complex in our identities. That requires work and intentionality. So the idea that someone's willing to work to get to know me, wow, thank you so much. So ingratiating. Anyone else? So as we go to our next slide, and you will have the slide deck. We're not going to do this right now, but I've included this inventory for creating conditions for adult and student thriving for your consideration. And as you look at it, think about how these practices, and many of them were already outlined for you, but this is included in our Oregon Instructional Framework, the Social Emotional Learning website. A beautiful tool, very simple, very practical, easy to engage with. And we get to think about it in thriving for adults, and then what do students need to thrive, thinking about their developmental stages, but just some very practical spaces. If we were in person, we'd go through and highlight the areas that we're doing really good at. I call it my brag method. Brag means be real about greatness, and after we brag again, be real about growth. So we go through and we look at these conditions for thriving. Again, many of them have been outlined for you. This is just more succinct, and say, hey, what are we really, really trailblazing with? What are we really doing well? And then, what do we need to give a couple of opportunities for reflection to think about how we can enact that? And so if we could go to the next slide. I've included the 3 signature practices. These support relationships, learning, and well-being. So as we think about social emotional learning as a universal support that all students and adults should be able to engage with, even beyond those social emotional, those cell days that people have, Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. I don't minimize that. Again, I say the program is beautiful and the people are even more significant. And we have people every day, the human experience. The 3 signature practices, low hanging fruit. We have an inclusive welcome at the beginning of the learning experience, welcoming the students, even getting to the point where our students take on that inclusive welcome. Who's in the room, affirming them, appreciating their presence, especially in the wake of chronic absenteeism. We're coming up with strategies to respond to chronic absenteeism. What are kiddos finding? Are they finding welcoming experiences when they come to school? Are they finding rituals and routines that honor who they are? And we get to invite them to be a part of even selecting what those rituals and routines look like, even through a culturally responsive space, inviting those different cultural affirmations and letting students have participation in what that looks like. And an inclusive welcome could be 2 to 3 minutes in a day. Like you can have beautiful, long, robust activities, or it could be something really, really succinct. Engaging strategies. That's the way we engage students and connect learning to their context, their existing schema. Engaging strategies. Turn and talk. That's an engaging strategy. Project-based learning can be an engaging strategy. Visual using visuals is a way that we can engage students. So there's so many different engagement strategies, and so we're constantly engaging students. And then an intentional close is the way that we end the learning experience for students. How do we highlight the experiences of the day? How do we appreciate their involvement in the interactions? And then how do we prepare for future actions or for the next class? So each of those I've linked in the 3 signature practices handbook for you to think about some activities that you might want to use, some inclusive welcomes. All of those are live links. And then at the bottom, you see the 3 signature practices handbook. And then I think I've also included the flipping book, online flipping book. As we go to the next slide, and I know we're just about out of time, just wanted to elevate. These are some strengths-based practices, and a lot of this just kind of echoes what we've already said. But if you wanted to go back, or if you were doing some professional development and you wanted to use this slide, we wanted it there for you. Are we affirming the identities? Are we making sure that we're affirming humanity without shaming and without embarrassing? What does it mean to be human? And inviting that dynamic within our classrooms, providing spaces to hear students' stories. And that could be a part of an engagement strategy. Providing equity and access. Focusing on enhancing factors that promote health and well-being rather than focusing on fixing, right? And glorifying problems and inviting students to be a part of that, right? And so these are just some strengths-based practices. And all of the pictures that you see here are students across Oregon. So we're elevating our students as you see these slides. So as we go to the next slide, and I think this will, I want to elevate this. Again, these are our students. And thinking through a strengths-based lens, how are we being strengths-based in our schools? Because we can focus on and deficitize the behavior, how our students are learning or are not learning, how they're showing up in class or not showing up in class. And we can say in a very deficitizing space with our language. I often hear these kids, these parents, my kids just can't do that. I don't know what's wrong with them. They don't want to learn. Like a lot of language which can be demoralizing and deficitizing. So how do we interrupt that? And understanding that a lot of times when we as educators use this language, we are dysregulated and we are frustrated. Um, and we understand where that comes from. It comes from a real place. And at the same time, we don't want to lose hope. And so how do we interrupt this thinking and this language with some compassion so that we can reset and say, I hear you, and how can I help you? How can I walk alongside? Here are some resources, or let's try this, or let's try that. But too often we drop this language and we stay there, and that really becomes kind of like the theme of the day. And so just thinking about that, thinking about strengths-based practices. Have you ever heard any of this language? If you're out there, another thumbs up or thumbs, have you ever heard this? Yeah, you've heard that language. And so we get to interrupt that. The T cell work says, hey, is this just? Is it equitable? Does it expand access? Does it provide well-being if we stop there? So as we go to the next slide, I've included for you all just some links to our Oregon Instructional Learning Framework. There are some tools and resources that I elevated. There are like 43 tools and resources on that in that bank. These are just some ones that I wanted you all to have immediate access to. There are learning modules that you can work through asynchronously. I included the self-management module for your consideration, a presentation on co-creating conditions, and you may see some of the you may see the tool around co-conditions. Yeah, you'll see that within that module. Again, the 3 signature practices playbook for adults. And then I've also included our teachers' guides, math, ELA, science, arts, and social sciences. They have some immediate T-cell integration opportunities there. So you can access that. And of course, you got to look at that baby to the right who's giving us a thumbs up, who's saying that she's saying you're doing the right work. Keep going. Keep going. Thank you for what you're doing. And lastly,
Dr. Finn, before I advance slide, in the image of the T cell, there's adult T cell in the middle of that image. And I just wonder, based on when we're talking about creating these conditions and using the SCL resources, if you could speak a little bit to like how adult T cell is different than then historically how SEL has been sort of taught to students, and if just to speak a little to that.
So the adult T cell is there to say, first of all, grounded in that humanity. Like adults can show up and become dysregulated. Adults can show up with emotions. Adults show up with the need to operate and function in partnership, in collaboration. And sometimes that can be dicey in some spaces, right? So the same mechanisms and strategies that we say that we integrate with and for students, we're asking educational leaders. If you're leading PD, lead that PD and open up with an inclusive welcome. Create opportunities for the adults to get to know each other, to build trust so that we can have collective efficacy. Within the framework is a whole section on adult T-cell. Are we doing check-ins with the adults? Are we aware? Do adults have trusted space in schools? So that when I just had that difficult conversation with a loved one at my home and I've got to come and put on my teacher face, do I have someone that I can be real with and help me to walk through that day? It simply is owning the fact that adults, we are real, we are tangible, and the work that we're doing, we also need support and we need to be able to access healthiness and well-being, not just so that we can help kids do it, but because we're healthy and we need to be regulated. And we need to be able to access healthiness. There are also some adult supports. Do adults know how to access the professional supports that we have as it relates to our well-being? The phone numbers, the contact list, so that we can tap in when we're experiencing economic challenge and complexity, financial economic complexity, relational economic complexity. We also need to tap into mental health. When we need to take a day, what does it look like to be able to take a reset and a pause day? So that's a component of all of the adult support. And I'll turn this over to you, Nat.
Thank you. Thank you. There's some great online modules around adult T-cell that I highly recommend you check out. Was it West Ed, Dr. Finn, that did all of that?
West Ed helped.
Yeah.
We partnered with it, West Ed.
So this last slide is really a mental health specific support line for you, for your students, for families. 988 is a free crisis prevention service that is available to all of us, and I always like to share it with folks to say, please don't wait until things feel so dire. Please reach out. There's support, there's connection that is offered specific to teens. I'm a big fan of the teen to teen text line. That's where youth are supporting other youth, takes adults out of it. And I think it just lends a different way of peer support that sometimes adults just don't have the capacity to, go back and think about what it was like to be 15. So, yeah, prevention is good medicine. We so appreciate all of you showing up today. We hope that there was something that you are able to leave with that you didn't have upon arrival. And I know that you are a little bit of a quiet group, but if you would like to share something that you're leaving with that you didn't have before, that would be great. And if not, I wish you a very chill rest of the day and good weekend.
You got to go to that last slide. That's our intentional close. That we've got to leave with that image. We got to leave with that. There we go. We got to breathe and take in the sun. We got to accept that we're going to keep it moving forward. We can't stop. And so, oh, you're amazing, Nat. You're amazing. But this really does tie in with, what am I thinking? Where's my head right now? Be in your body. Where's my heart? What am I feeling? And then my hands, our hands are powerful. What am I going to do? And even more importantly, what am I going to create space for our students to do? And so keep it moving. We're here to partner. Please reach out. And if you want to add something to the chat, thank you so much. Thank you, Bianca. We appreciate all of you. We truly do.
Dr. Finn and I are one of, I think, 8 people who host an ODE office hours for mental health. Our next one is March 10th, so next Tuesday. I believe it's scheduled for, we keep changing it to make sure folks can attend. I can share the information with Beth, if that's okay. Just like wanting to say that there's a lot of us who are showing up at ODE wanting to support folks who are doing work directly with students every single day, and we appreciate you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Very welcome. Thank you. Take care.
You too.
Bye.